36 years old, United States Air Force. I worked my way up from ROTC drills in Colorado Springs to commanding air crews under real operational pressure, the kind that doesn't make headlines, but keeps people alive. For years, I funded my sister's education, her apartment, her car, her comfort, everything she said she needed while I was deployed overseas. But when she sold my service medals online for wedding money, everything changed. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you gave everything to? The kind of betrayal that forces you to stop protecting the people who keep hurting you? If so, tell me your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to stand your ground against family pressure, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming your worth. What happened next might surprise you. I grew up believing service meant something. Not the kind of service you put on a resume or mention at dinner parties, the kind that costs you holidays, birthdays, and the luxury of being understood by the people who raised you. I'm Major Megan Jefferson, United States Air Force, 36 years old, and until 2 years ago, I thought family loyalty ran both ways. Colorado Springs shaped me into someone who believed in structure. My parents were high school teachers, practical people who valued education and stability. They had 2 daughters, me, the oldest, who joined ROTC at 16 and never looked back, and Hannah, for years younger, who learned early that being charming could get you further than being disciplined. The Air Force Academy took everything I had and gave me everything I needed. While Hannah was posting photos from high school football games, I was running obstacle courses at 0530 and memorizing aircraft specifications. My parents were proud then. They attended my commissioning ceremony, took photos with me in my blues, told their friends their daughter was an officer. That pride had a shelf life I didn't know about. Deployments came fast after I made captain. Bagram, Al-Udeid, a rotation through Ramstein that turned into 8 months of mission support I still can't fully discuss. I sent letters when I could, called on birthdays from whatever time zone I was operating in. Hannah's voice on those calls was always distracted, always mid-conversation with someone more interesting than her sister calling from a military base halfway around the world. The distance wasn't just geographic. While I was learning how to coordinate air operations under hostile conditions, Hannah was cultivating an Instagram presence and a lifestyle that required funding she didn't earn. Tuition for a marketing degree she never finished, I covered it. A car when hers broke down junior year, I wired the money from Qatar. Her first apartment deposit because our parents said she needed help getting started, I sent it the day before a mission briefing. I never asked for repayment. That's what family does, right? You take care of your own. She never asked what mission support meant, never wanted details about where I'd been or what I'd seen. She asked when I'd be home, if I could send money, whether I thought her new boyfriend seemed successful. By the time I made major at 33, ahead of my year group, I'd stopped expecting Hannah to understand my career. The congratulations text came 3 days late. That's great. Hey, can you co-sign for this loan? My credit's weird right now. I should have seen it then. The pattern was carved in stone I provided, she consumed, and everyone agreed that's how it worked because I was the responsible one who didn't need anything. Post-COVID military life meant adjusting to a world that had moved on while we'd kept operating. I drew an assignment at Joint Base Andrews, close enough to home that my parents suggested Sunday dinners I rarely made because weekend duty doesn't respect family tradition. Hannah was planning a wedding by then to a guy named Caleb who called himself an entrepreneur but seemed to primarily monetize her social media following. The engagement photos were professional, expensive. Hannah posted them with captions about building our empire and manifesting abundance. My mother sent them to me with a message, "Your sister's doing so well. When are you going to settle down?" I was 34, a field-grade officer managing personnel and operational readiness for units deploying to 3 different theaters. Settling down wasn't on my timeline. Neither was a wedding that apparently required a $40,000 budget. Hannah started calling my medals props when she helped our mother clean out storage boxes during a visit home. I was at the Pentagon, working air staff actions that couldn't wait for my input. She FaceTimed me from my childhood bedroom, holding up my shadow box of ribbons and badges. "Do you actually need all this military stuff? It's taking up so much space." I explained that those weren't decorations. They were official military awards, some tied to classified operations. The shadow box contained my Aerial Achievement Medal, my Air Force Commendation Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters, and a citation from a joint task force operation I still couldn't discuss in detail. Right? But they're just sitting here. Nobody even sees them. That should have been my warning. Instead, I told her to leave everything in the box, that I'd deal with it when I had leave. She said fine in that tone that meant the conversation was already over in her mind. The family group chat had become a place I checked out of obligation rather than interest. Hannah posted constantly, wedding venue updates, dress fittings, vendor complaints. My mother responded to everything with enthusiasm. My father sent thumbs up emojis. I stayed silent mostly, reading messages between meetings and feeling like I was watching a show about someone else's family. When I did contribute, it felt wrong. I mentioned a change in my deployment cycle, and Hannah responded, "Can you just not schedule military stuff during my wedding?" She was joking. Probably. But Caleb jumped in. "Seriously though, you can get out of that, right? Family comes first." I didn't explain that you don't get out of deployments. I didn't explain that family had come first for me for years, in the form of rent checks and car payments and tuition transfers. I just stopped posting in the chat. My parents started calling me difficult. "Hannah's stressed about the wedding, Meg. Can't you just be supportive?" I'd been supportive for 15 years. I'd been an ATM with a sister attached. But pointing that out made me the bitter one, the career woman who didn't understand what really mattered. Caleb's influence seeped into every conversation. He had opinions about everything, especially things he knew nothing about. During a rare dinner at my parents' house, he told me most military people he'd met were just doing it for the benefits, and that real patriotism is building businesses that strengthen America. I nodded and finished my meal. You learn in the military that some arguments aren't worth having. You also learn that some people will never respect what they can't monetize. The jokes started small. Hannah would say things like, "Meg's got her fake hero stories again," when I mentioned work. Caleb would laugh, and my parents would do that thing where they pretend not to hear what was just said. Once, I mentioned my commissioning anniversary coming up 14 years as an officer, and Hannah said, "God, are we still celebrating that?" 14 years. Deployments across 4 continents. 3 combat zones. 2 master's degrees completed during off-duty hours. A record that put me on track for lieutenant colonel ahead of my peers. And my baby sister thought it was something we should stop acknowledging. I began to understand that I'd trained my family wrong. I'd taught them that my time didn't matter, that my boundaries were negotiable, that my accomplishments were background noise to their real lives. I'd enabled Hannah to see me as a resource rather than a person. But I didn't know how to untrain them. You can't put boundaries on family after years of having none. You can't suddenly ask for respect after teaching people they don't owe you any. So I stayed quiet. I showed up when I could. I wired money when asked. And I pretended not to notice that I'd become the least important person in my own family. The text came on a Thursday while I was in a briefing about operational security protocols. My phone was silenced, but I saw it light up during a break. Unknown number, but the message had a screenshot attached. I opened it in the hallway. Someone had sent me a photo of an eBay listing, authentic military medal collection, Air Force commendations and service ribbons, $250 OBO. The photo showed my shadow box. My actual shadow box, the one I'd told Hannah explicitly not to touch. The one containing awards from operations I couldn't discuss, with identifiers that tied back to units and missions that weren't public record. I called Hannah immediately. She answered on the 4th ring, annoyed. "What?" "I'm at a fitting. Did you sell my medals?" Silence. Then, "Oh. Yeah. I needed cash for the final venue deposit." "They're just replicas though, right? You said you get duplicates." "No, Hannah. I said the medals themselves can be replaced if damaged. Those specific ones are federal property. They have serial identifiers. They're just metal, Meg." "God, you're being so dramatic. I'll buy you new ones after the wedding." She hung up. I stood in the Pentagon corridor, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. My sister had stolen federal property, listed it for sale online, and thought it was equivalent to pawning old jewelry. I called my mother. She already knew. "Hannah told us she was selling some old military things you didn't want. She said you were fine with it." I explicitly told her not to touch anything in that box. "Well, she needs money for the wedding, Meg. You know how expensive everything is. Can't you just let this go?" "They're not mine to let go." They're government property with classification markers. My mother sighed, that particular sigh that meant I was being unreasonable. You always have to make everything so complicated. Can you just call whoever and explain it was a mistake? I couldn't explain that federal property theft wasn't something you called someone about. I couldn't explain that those metals contained embedded identifiers that would flag the moment someone tried to authenticate them. I couldn't explain that my sister had just committed a crime that would bring federal investigators to her door regardless of what I did or didn't do. Instead, I said, I have to go, and hung up. The next call came from a friend who'd seen the listing before it was taken down. Meg, someone reported that eBay post to CID. Just a heads up, this is going to get official fast. Criminal Investigation Command. Which meant my sister's little cash grab had already entered the system. I sat in my office after the briefing ended and stared at my computer screen, not seeing anything on it. I'd paid for her education, her car, her apartment. I'd covered credit card debt and medical bills, and that time she needed a lawyer for a fender bender she tried to leave. I'd sent money from deployment zones and missed holidays and birthdays because duty called. And she'd stolen from me. Not borrowed. Not asked. Stolen. The knock came at 0800 on Saturday. I wasn't there. I was on base, catching up on administrative work. But Hannah called me, hysterical, barely coherent. There are federal agents at my door. They're saying something about stolen military property. Meg, what did you do? I didn't do anything, Hannah. You did. You reported me? Your own sister. I didn't have to. Those metals have tracking identifiers. The moment you listed them, the system flagged it. I could hear voices in the background, official and firm. Someone was reading her rights. Hannah was crying, saying she didn't know, saying it was a mistake. Tell them the truth, I said. Tell them you took them from my storage without permission and didn't know they were classified property. Make them stop. Tell them it's fine, that you gave them to me. I can't do that, Hannah. That would be filing a false statement. Just cooperate with them. She screamed something I didn't catch, and the line went dead. My mother called 30 seconds later. Then my father. Then my mother again. I let them all go to voicemail. I sat in my office and felt something cold settle in my chest, not satisfaction, not vindication. Just clarity. The Office of Special Investigations contacted me that afternoon. Agent Ramirez was professional, thorough. He asked about the metals, about their storage, about who had access. I answered every question directly, provided documentation, explained the timeline. Did you give your sister permission to take these items? No. I explicitly told her not to touch them. Did she know they were federal property? I told her they were official military awards tied to classified operations. He made notes. We'll need you to come in for a formal statement. This is standard procedure for property recovery. You're not under investigation, Major, but we need to establish chain of custody. Understood. For what it's worth, he said, and there was something almost sympathetic in his voice. This happens more than you'd think. Family members don't understand the difference between personal effects and government property. I thanked him and hung up. Family members don't understand. That was the problem, wasn't it? My family had never understood. Not the deployments, not the medals, not the career I'd built. They'd never understood because I'd never made them. I just kept giving and giving until they believed everything I had was theirs to take. My phone showed 47 missed calls by evening. I didn't return any of them. I went home to my apartment off base, poured a glass of water, and sat in the silence I'd earned. The formal debrief happened on Monday at 0900. I wore my service dress uniform and brought every piece of documentation requested. Agent Ramirez led the interview with another investigator present. They recorded everything. Walk us through the timeline, Major Jefferson. I did. The storage arrangement, Hannah's visit, the phone call about the metals being props, my explicit instructions to leave them alone. The eBay screenshot. Her admission that she'd sold them for wedding money. Did your sister express understanding that these were federal property when you told her not to touch them? I told her they were official military awards. She responded that they were just sitting there and nobody was using them. And after you learned she'd sold them? She said they were just metal and that she'd buy me new ones after her wedding. The investigator made a note. Did you file a formal complaint? No. I was informed the system had already flagged the transaction. They asked more questions. About my clearance level. about the specific commendations in the shadow box, about whether I'd been negligent in securing them. That last one landed differently. The items were stored in a locked box in my childhood bedroom at my parents' residence. My sister accessed that room and that box without my knowledge or permission. But you knew your sister had access to the house? I knew my family lived there. I didn't anticipate theft. Agent Ramirez leaned back. We're not suggesting negligence, Major. We're establishing facts. For the record, you took appropriate security measures for off-site storage of personal awards. Your sister's actions constitute unauthorized removal of government property. After they finished, they told me to wait. I sat in a conference room and watched the clock tick. At 10:30, my commanding officer entered. Colonel Larson, sharp-eyed and efficient, closed the door behind her. How bad is it? I asked. For you? Not bad. OSI is satisfied you weren't negligent. But Jefferson, we need to talk about operational security implications. Ma'am, your family now represents a vulnerability. Not because of what happened, theft happens, but because of how they might respond to the consequences. Are they likely to publicly discuss your career? Your assignments? I thought about Hannah's Instagram following, about Caleb's tendency to monetize everything, about my mother's book club friends who loved a dramatic story. It's possible, ma'am. Colonel Larson nodded. I'm recommending you for the squadron commander slot at Edwards that's opening up. You're on the promotion list already. This just accelerates your timeline. Clean break, new command, away from family complications. Is that an order, ma'am? It's a professional recommendation. You've earned the promotion, Jefferson. Don't let family drama interfere with your career. Take the transfer. She left me with paperwork and a decision that didn't feel like a choice. Later that night, I sat in my apartment and ignored 17 new voicemails. One text came through from a number I didn't recognize. This is Major Tran from Ops Planning. Heard you had a rough week. Beer at O'Malley's if you need to decompress. I'd met Elias Tran a few times, quiet, competent, the kind of officer who did his job well without broadcasting it. I almost declined. Then I remembered sitting alone in my apartment for the third night in a row and decided isolation wasn't strength. O'Malley's was the kind of bar near base where everyone understood not to ask too many questions. Tran was already there, nursing a beer and reading something on his tablet. He looked up when I arrived, nodded to the empty seat. Thanks for coming out, he said. Wasn't sure you would. Wasn't sure I should. He ordered me a beer without asking what I wanted. When it arrived, he said, I'm not going to ask what happened. But I heard OSI was involved, and I know what that means for someone's week. It's handled. Is it? I drank some of the beer. It was cold and exactly what I needed. My sister stole classified property and sold it online. Federal investigators recovered it. I gave a statement. It's handled. And your family? They think I should have protected her from consequences. Tran nodded slowly. My brother stole my identity for a credit card when I was deployed to Afghanistan. Ran up $30,000 in debt before I even knew. My parents told me to drop the charges because that's not what family does. You know what I did? Filed charges anyway? Filed charges. Took the financial hit. Stopped loaning him money. He called me every name you can imagine. My parents didn't speak to me for 2 years. He looked at me directly. Best decision I ever made. Set a boundary that should have been set 10 years earlier. How did you know it was the right call? Because I stopped feeling like a wallet with a brother attached. Took a while, but eventually they figured out I was serious. Some of them came around. Some didn't. Either way, I got my life back. We sat in silence for a while. The bar noise filled the space, conversations, laughter, the clink of glasses. Normal sounds from normal lives. Colonel Larson's recommending me for Edwards, I said finally. Good assignment. You taking it? Feels like running away. Feels like strategic repositioning to me. You can't fix your family from Maryland any better than you can from California. Might as well take the promotion and command time. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing something and accepting it are different things. They're going to paint me as the villain in this story, I said. Hannah's probably already posting about her oppressive military sister who ruined her wedding. Let her. The people who matter know the truth. The people who don't matter are just entertainment. Tran finished his beer. You know what I learned? You can't control the narrative. You can only control whether you let it control you. I went home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Not better, exactly, but clearer. The decision about Edwards wasn't about running. It was about choosing which battles mattered. My family had declared me the enemy for enforcing consequences they didn't like. I couldn't change that. But I could stop fighting for people who'd never fought for me. The formal report arrived on Wednesday. I read it in Colonel Larson's office, standing at attention out of habit rather than requirement. The language was bureaucratic but clear. Unauthorized removal of government property, federal recovery action completed, no negligence found regarding the property custodian. Your clearance remains intact, Colonel Larson said. But there's a note in your file now about family vulnerability factors. What does that mean for my career? Nothing if you manage it correctly. It means when you're up for assignments requiring higher clearances, they'll look harder at your family situation. Standard procedure. She paused. The Edwards transfer is still on the table. Squadron command, 18 months. After that, you'd be competitive for group deputy positions. And if I stay here, you'd stay here. Keep your current job. Watch other people get the commands you're qualified for because someone has to worry about whether your sister's going to sell classified documents next time she needs cash. It wasn't fair. It also wasn't wrong. I'll take Edwards, ma'am. Good. You've earned this, Jefferson. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. She dismissed me with a nod that felt like approval. That evening, I finally listened to my parents' voicemails. The early ones were confused, asking what had happened, why federal agents were involved. The later ones were angry. How could I let this happen to Hannah? Didn't I understand she was just trying to pay for her wedding? Why couldn't I fix this quietly? The most recent one was from my father, and his voice had that tired quality that meant my mother had made him call. Meg, honey, Hannah's sponsors are dropping her. The story got picked up by some military blogs. Can you make a statement or something? Say it was a misunderstanding? She's losing everything. I deleted all of them. Then I pulled up my contacts, scrolled to Hannah's name, and stared at it. My thumb hovered over the call button. What would I say? That I was sorry? I wasn't. That I forgave her? I didn't. That we could fix this? We couldn't. Instead, I edited her contact information. Changed her name to immediate family, risk noted. Left the number in place, but archived the conversation history. She was still my sister. That hadn't changed. But what that meant had. The formal recommendation to file charges came across my desk the next morning. Agent Ramirez called to explain the options. I could support prosecution. Theft of government property carried serious penalties. I could decline to support prosecution, which wouldn't stop the investigation but would weaken the case. Or I could provide a victim impact statement that acknowledged harm without demanding maximum punishment. What happens if I don't file charges? I asked. She'll still face administrative penalties. Fines, restitution, possible probation. But no federal charges on her record. And if I do? She could face up to a year in prison, depending on the prosecutor's decision and the judge's interpretation. Given that she cooperated and the property was recovered, probably suspended sentence and heavier fines. I thought about Hannah standing in front of a judge, Caleb probably beside her, both of them convinced this was somehow my fault. I thought about my parents in the courtroom, choosing which daughter to sit behind. I thought about 18 more months of family phone calls demanding I make this go away. I'll provide the impact statement, I said. No recommendation either way on prosecution. Just facts. Agent Ramirez was quiet for a moment. That's probably wise, Major. Let's the system work without you being the villain or the savior. After I hung up, I drafted the statement. It was 3 paragraphs. I described the property taken, its significance to both my career and national security, and the impact of the breach on my professional standing. I acknowledged that my sister cooperated once confronted. I made no recommendation about charges. I signed it, dated it, and sent it through official channels. Then I closed the file and went back to work. The media story broke on a Friday. Military influencer's wedding crisis. Feds seize vintage medals sold for venue deposit. The article had Hannah's Instagram photos, screenshots of the deleted eBay listing, and unnamed sources close to the family, saying I'd refused to help with wedding costs, forcing my sister to find creative solutions. My phone started ringing. Media requests, mostly. A few acquaintances asking if I was okay. One call from my mother. Did you see what they're writing? Meg, you have to make them stop. I didn't answer. I submitted my transfer paperwork, updated my duty assignment preferences, and focused on the work I could control. My promotion to lieutenant colonel was officially confirmed, selection list published, ceremony scheduled for 6 weeks out. Colonel Larson called me into her office the day after the media story dropped. "You handling this okay?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Because it's going to get worse before it gets better. Your sister gave an interview to some online magazine. Posted it this morning." She turned her monitor toward me. The headline read, "When Family Chooses Career Over Connection, One Woman's Story of Military Bureaucracy." Hannah's face filled the screen, makeup perfect, Caleb's arm around her shoulders. The article portrayed her as a struggling bride trying to honor her sisters and used military memorabilia by giving it to collectors who'd appreciate it. I was painted as a rigid careerist who valued medals over family bonds. The comments section was split, half sympathizing with Hannah, half calling her entitled. Someone had found my commissioning photo and posted it with the caption, "This is the heartless sister. Show some respect." "She's playing the victim card hard," Colonel Larson observed. "Yes, ma'am." "You going to respond?" "No, ma'am. Anything I say becomes part of the story. Silence is cleaner." She nodded approvingly. "That's the right call. Let her burn herself out. The facts are documented. Anyone who matters has access to them." But facts didn't reach the people leaving comments on Hannah's posts. Facts didn't stop my mother from calling every day, begging me to just talk to her, fix this, make it right. Facts didn't change the reality that my family had chosen a side, and it wasn't mine. My father sent a long email a week later. He wrote about family loyalty, about forgiveness, about how I'd always been the strong one and needed to be strong enough to let this go. He reminded me of Thanksgivings and Christmases, of childhood memories when Hannah and I had been close. He said Hannah was sorry, even if she couldn't say it directly, and that time would heal everything if I'd just give it a chance. I read it twice. Then I wrote back, "Dad, I love you." But Hannah stole federal property and lied about it. What happened next wasn't my choice, it was consequences. I can't fix what she broke. I'm moving to Edwards AFB in 2 months. You're always welcome to visit. He didn't respond. My mother sent a single text, "I hope you're happy now." I wasn't happy, but I was learning the difference between happiness and peace. Happiness required things outside my control, family approval, reconciliation, the narrative I couldn't write. Peace just required me to stop fighting battles I'd already lost. The promotion ceremony happened on a cold March morning. Small gathering, mostly coworkers and wing leadership. Colonel Larson pinned on my new rank insignia, silver oak leaves replacing the gold ones I'd worn for 4 years. Major Tran was there, taking photos with my phone since I had no family present. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Colonel," he said afterward. "Thanks. Feels weird. Getting promoted always does. But you earned it. Don't let the family stuff take that from you." I wouldn't. Whatever else had happened, this was mine. I'd earned this rank through deployments and staff work and leadership evaluations. I'd earned it by being good at my job, not by being convenient for other people's plans. The reassignment orders came through in April. I had 6 weeks to clear my current position, outprocess from Andrews, and report to Edwards. My apartment lease ended conveniently. Everything in my life was becoming convenient, now that I'd stopped trying to accommodate everyone else's chaos. I donated most of my furniture, sold my car, and arranged a government-furnished vehicle at the new base. Packed my life into boxes labeled with characteristic military efficiency, kitchen, uniforms, personal items. The shadow box recovered from evidence and returned to me with an official inventory tag, still attached, went into a case marked official items, do not separate. Major Tran helped me load the moving truck on my final weekend. We worked in silence mostly, the kind of comfortable quiet you only get with people who understand that not everything needs to be discussed. "You're going to do great at Edwards," he said as we finished. "Hope so. Been a while since I had command. You'll remember. It's like flying, once you learn, you don't forget." He handed me his card. "Stay in touch. And if you ever need someone who understands complicated family situations, I'm around." I hugged him, brief, professional, but genuine. "Thanks for showing up when it mattered. That's what friends do." I drove away from Maryland on a Sunday morning, my entire life in a truck behind me, feeling lighter than I had in years. The road west stretched open and clear. No family dinners I'd miss. No crises I'd be expected to manage. No emergency calls for money or rescue or validation. Just me, my career, and the future I'd finally chosen for myself. Edwards Air Force Base sits on the edge of the Mojave Desert, where the sky is bigger than anywhere else I've served. I reported for duty on a Monday morning in May, checking in with the wing commander before assuming command of the maintenance squadron. 90 personnel responsible for keeping test aircraft mission ready. Real responsibility. Real leadership. The change of command ceremony was small, standard for a squadron-level transfer. The outgoing commander briefed me on personnel issues, equipment status, and the informal power dynamics that never make it into official reports. He was competent, tired, ready for his next assignment. Squadron solid, he said. Good NCOs, decent officer corps. A few problem children, but nothing you can't handle. Flight chiefs know their jobs. Let them lead. I took command at 0900 on a Wednesday. The squadron stood in formation, and I gave the shortest speech I could manage. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Jefferson. I expect accountability, professionalism, and honest communication. If you do your job well, we'll get along fine. If you don't, we'll fix it together or find you a new job. Dismissed. The senior master sergeant, Chief Ortiz, 24 years in, seen everything twice, approached me after formation. Ma'am, that was the best change of command speech I've heard in 10 years. It was 30 seconds. Exactly. He grinned. We're going to get along fine. The work consumed me in the best way. Squadron command meant responsibility for people, not just paperwork. It meant hearing about divorces and deployment stress and financial problems and career goals. It meant making decisions that affected real lives, not just organizational charts. I kept the recovered shadow box in my office, mounted on the wall behind my desk where anyone sitting across from me could see it. The official inventory tag stayed attached, a small piece of evidence tape with a case number and date. Officers who came in for counseling sessions would notice it, though most were too professional to ask. But the cadets did. Edwards hosted Academy cadets for summer programs, and they rotated through squadron offices to see what real Air Force leadership looked like. A second-year cadet, bright-eyed, eager, reminded me uncomfortably of myself at that age, pointed at the shadow box during a visit. Ma'am, why is there an evidence tag on your awards? I could have deflected. Instead, I said, because someone I trusted took them without permission and tried to sell them. Federal investigators recovered them. The tag reminds me that accountability isn't just paperwork, it's character. She processed that silently. Then, was it hard? Having that happen? Yes. But accountability is supposed to be hard. That's how you know it matters. She nodded, serious in that way young people are when they're learning things that will define them later. After she left, Chief Ortiz stuck his head in. Good answer, ma'am. Just the truth, Chief. Truth's usually the best answer. Even when it costs something. Especially then, I thought. But I just nodded and got back to work. The months passed in the rhythm of command, flight line issues, personnel evaluations, maintenance schedules, commanders' calls. I ran the squadron with the same discipline I'd learned at the academy, clear standards, consistent enforcement, praise in public and correction in private. The first few months tested me, every new commander gets tested. But Chief Ortiz backed me when it mattered, and the flight chiefs appreciated that I trusted them to do their jobs. My parents stopped calling. Hannah's wedding happened without me. I saw the photos on social media before blocking her account. She looked beautiful. Caleb looked successful. Everything looked perfect in that carefully curated way that probably meant it wasn't. I felt nothing looking at those photos. Not anger, not satisfaction, just distance. Like watching strangers' lives through a window. A year into command, my mother sent a letter. Physical mail, forwarded through official channels. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. Meg, it began, no dear, no love. Just my name. Your father and I have been talking. What happened with Hannah was unfortunate, but we understand now that you couldn't control the legal process. We're not angry anymore. We'd like to plan a visit to see your new base. Let us know what works for your schedule. I read it 3 times, looking for the apology that wasn't there. Unfortunate. Couldn't control. No acknowledgement that Hannah had stolen from me. No recognition that they'd chosen her side without hearing mine. Just a reset request, like we could pretend the past year hadn't happened. I filed the letter in my desk drawer and didn't respond. Maybe that made me petty. Maybe it made me unforgiving. But I'd learned something important. You don't owe people access to your life just because they're related to you. Family is supposed to be the people who show up when it matters, not the ones who demand you absorb their damage. Chief Ortiz noticed the letter on my desk before I filed it. Bad news, ma'am. Family stuff. Invitation to reconcile without any actual reconciliation. He grunted. Had that with my ex-wife. Wanted to be friends after she cleaned out our bank account. Told her friendship requires trust, and trust has to be earned. He paused. You don't owe anyone forgiveness they haven't worked for. Thought I was supposed to be the one with wisdom, Chief. Rank doesn't mean you've got all the answers, ma'am. Just means you've got more people watching when you figure them out. That night, alone in my base quarters, I drafted a response to my mother's letter. Wrote 3 versions, each one trying to explain why their invitation wasn't enough. Then I deleted all of them and wrote a single paragraph. Mom and Dad, I received your letter. I'm not ready for a visit. If that changes, I'll let you know. I hope you're both well. Meg, I mailed it the next morning and felt lighter for it. Not because I'd forgiven them, but because I'd stopped needing to. Hannah's letter arrived 18 months after I took command. It came through my parents' address, forwarded to base with my mother's handwriting on the outer envelope. Inside was a single page, Hannah's careful script. She always had pretty handwriting. Megan, it began. No, Meg. Formal, careful. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't know if you'll even read this. But I need to say some things, even if you never respond. I was wrong. Not just about taking your medals, though that was wrong too, but about everything before that. I treated you like a bank account with a sister attached. I dismissed your career because it wasn't something I understood or valued. I took your help for granted and never acknowledged what it cost you. The federal investigation destroyed my influencer career. Lost all my sponsors, most of my followers. Caleb and I are divorcing. Turns out he was more interested in my income potential than in me. I've had to get a real job, and it turns out retail management doesn't come with the lifestyle I thought I deserved. I'm not writing for sympathy. I'm writing because I finally understand what you tried to tell me. Actions have consequences. I stole from you. I minimized your service. I chose wedding money over family integrity. I deserved everything that happened. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to ask for it. But I needed you to know that I understand now. And I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not sorry I got caught, but sorry for who I was and what I took from you. If you never want to speak to me again, I understand. But if you're ever willing to try, I'll be here. And I'll spend however long it takes proving I've changed. Hannah, I read the letter sitting at my desk, the shadow box with its evidence tag visible in my peripheral vision. Outside my window, aircraft were landing in precise intervals, ordered, controlled, accountable. The letter sounded genuine. But I'd heard genuine-sounding words from Hannah before, usually right before she asked for something. The difference this time was that she wasn't asking. She was acknowledging. Maybe that mattered. Maybe it didn't. Chief Ortiz found me still holding the letter an hour later. You okay, ma'am? Sister wrote. First contact since everything happened. Says she's sorry. Is she? Sounds like it. But I don't know if sorry is enough. He sat down without asking permission. That's what you get with senior enlisted, the earned right to speak plainly. My dad kicked me out when I was 17 for being gay. Told me I wasn't his son anymore. 15 years later, he showed up at my promotion ceremony. Said he was wrong, said he was sorry. Wanted a relationship. What did you do? Told him I appreciated the apology. Told him I forgave him. And told him that forgiveness didn't mean pretending the last 15 years didn't happen. We could start fresh, but we'd be starting from zero, not from where we were before. Did it work? Took time. But yeah, we talk now. Not father-son like before, but like two adults who have history and are building something new. Sometimes that's the best you can do. After he left, I drafted a response to Hannah. Kept it short. Hannah, I received your letter. I appreciate the apology and I believe you mean it. But rebuilding trust takes time and consistency. If you're serious about changing, prove it through actions over months, not words in a moment. If you can do that, maybe we can talk. But the relationship we had before is over. If we build something new, it will be on different terms. You'll need to repay the restitution to the government. That's not optional. Beyond that, focus on building a life you're proud of. Not for me, for yourself. Megan, I didn't mail it immediately. Let it sit for 3 days, reread it, decided it was honest without being cruel. Then I sent it. Her response came 2 weeks later. I understand. Thank you for not closing the door completely. I'll work on being someone worthy of trust. No promises. No timeline. Just acknowledgement. Maybe that was growth. Maybe it was manipulation. Time would tell. I didn't change her contact information. Left it as immediate family, risk noted, and went back to the work that had never betrayed me. 2 years after taking command at Edwards, I stood in front of my squadron for the final time. My change of command ceremony, outgoing now, handing off to the next lieutenant colonel who'd lead these people. The sun was brutal that July morning, desert heat already pushing 90 degrees at 0900. I'd spent the previous week doing final counseling sessions, signing off on awards, writing evaluations that would follow these airmen through their careers. Chief Ortiz was retiring, his ceremony had been the week prior, and I'd been honored to speak at it. The squadron had performed exceptionally during my tenure. Highest readiness ratings in the wing, 0 Class A mishaps, 3 consecutive quarterly awards. During my final speech, I kept it short again. Talked about accountability, about the honor of leading people who worked harder than I did, about the privilege of command. Then I said something I hadn't planned. In this office, on that wall, there's a shadow box with an evidence tag attached. Some of you have asked about it. It's there to remind me that accountability isn't abstract, it's personal. It means owning your mistakes, accepting consequences, and holding the line even when the cost is high. You've shown me what accountability looks like when it's lived, not just discussed. You've made this squadron something I'm proud to have led. Take care of each other. Hold the line. And remember that character is what you do when nobody's watching, but someone always is. After the ceremony, as guests filtered out and movers prepared to pack up my office, I took down the shadow box. The evidence tag was fading now, the ink not quite as sharp as it had been 2 years ago. But the message remained clear. Chief Ortiz found me holding it. Taking that with you to the Pentagon, ma'am? My next assignment, Air Staff Action Officer, Pentagon. Policy work, strategic planning. The kind of job that led to senior leadership positions if you didn't screw it up. Yes, Chief. Some reminders are worth keeping. That they are. He extended his hand. Been an honor serving with you, Colonel. The honor was mine. Enjoy retirement. Go do something absolutely unmilitary. Planning on it. Got a boat. Planning to fish and never salute anyone again. He left whistling. I finished packing my office, the shadow box carefully wrapped and labeled for the movers. Official items. Handle with care. My phone rang as I was doing a final walkthrough. Unknown Maryland number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Megan. Hannah's voice uncertain. Hey, I know you're busy. Mom said you're moving again. Just wanted to. I finished paying the restitution. Last payment cleared yesterday. Took 2 years, but it's done. That's good, Hannah. How are you doing? I'm managing. Still working retail. Got promoted to district manager last month. Nothing glamorous, but it's honest work. A pause. I'm not asking to be sisters again. I know I burned that bridge. But I wanted you to know I've been doing what you said. Building something I'm proud of. I looked around the empty office, sunlight streaming through windows that would frame someone else's view tomorrow. I appreciate you telling me. And for handling the restitution. It was the least I could do. The actual least. She laughed, slightly bitter. Literally the minimum required by law. But you did it. That counts. Another pause. If you're ever back east and want to get coffee, no pressure, but I'd like that. Even just to talk like adults instead of whatever we were before. I thought about Chief Ortiz's story. About building something new instead of trying to resurrect what died. About the difference between forgiveness and trust. Maybe I said, let me get settled in Washington. We'll see. Okay. Good luck with the new job, Megan. I mean that. Thanks, Hannah. After I hung up, I stood in the empty office and felt something unfamiliar. Possibility. Not certainty, not trust, but the space where those things could grow if conditions were right. Maybe my sister had changed. Maybe she'd prove it over time. Maybe we'd build something new that looked nothing like what we'd had before. Or maybe we wouldn't. And I'd learned I could live with that too. The Pentagon is everything Edwards wasn't: enclosed, bureaucratic, thousands of people moving through fluorescent-lit corridors with purpose, but rarely urgency. I reported to Air Staff in September, took over a portfolio of fighter modernization issues, and settled into the rhythm of staff work. My office was small, standard issue. I hung the shadow box on the wall behind my desk, evidence tag still attached. It drew fewer questions here. Pentagon officers had seen stranger things. But occasionally someone would notice. A two-star general visiting for a briefing paused in front of it during a break. That's an unusual display, Colonel. Yes, sir. Reminder about accountability. He looked closer, saw the evidence tag, nodded slowly. Good reminder. We could use more of that around here. I kept in touch with Chief Ortiz, occasional emails about fishing and civilian life. Major Tran got promoted to lieutenant colonel and took command at Langley. We traded messages about the peculiar challenges of military leadership and complicated family dynamics. Hannah and I exchanged Christmas cards that year. Hers showed her in business casual at what looked like a company holiday party, smiling but not performing. Mine showed me in service dress at a Pentagon ceremony. We didn't write much, just hope you're well and variations thereof. Small steps toward something undefined. My parents remained distant. They'd sided with Hannah during the crisis and never quite acknowledged they'd been wrong. I'd accepted that some relationships don't survive being tested. I sent birthday cards and holiday calls. They responded politely. We maintained the form of family without the substance. Maybe that was enough. On my one-year anniversary at the Pentagon, I was working late, standard for action officers, when a colonel from OSI knocked on my door. I'd never met him, but the badge was familiar. Colonel Jefferson? I'm Colonel Marcus, Special Operations Division. Got a minute? Of course, sir. He entered, closed the door, and gestured to the shadow box. I heard about your case. Wanted to stop by and say, unofficially, that you handled it exactly right. Thank you, sir. We see a lot of family exploitation of clearances. Most officers try to cover it up, protect the family member, hope it goes away. You reported it, cooperated fully, took the professional hit without complaint. That's increasingly rare. It was federal property, sir. Didn't seem complicated. It wasn't complicated legally. It was complicated personally. Most people choose family over procedure. You chose both, protected your clearance and your career while not throwing your sister to the wolves more than necessary. He paused. Your security file is flagged positively now. When you're up for senior positions requiring TS/SCI access, you won't have issues. That tag means you're accountable. After he left, I sat at my desk and processed what he'd said. The shadow box wasn't a mark of shame, it was evidence of character. The hardest decision I'd made had become proof I could be trusted with harder ones. I pulled out my phone and opened a text thread I hadn't used in months. Hannah's number. Hey, free for coffee when I'm home for Thanksgiving. Her response came 10 minutes later. Yes. I'd really like that. 3 weeks later, I sat across from my sister in a Starbucks near our parents' house. She looked different, older, tired, but more real somehow. Less performance, more presence. You look good, she said. Pentagon treating you well? It's a job. Lot of paperwork, lot of meetings. But I'm learning things that'll matter later. I sipped my coffee. Mom said you made district manager. Yeah, 12 stores now. It's exhausting, but I'm good at it. Turns out retail management is basically crisis management with lower stakes. We talked for an hour. Not about medals or investigations or the years we'd lost. We talked about work stress and apartment hunting and the peculiar challenge of being 30-something and figuring out who you are. It felt like meeting an acquaintance who might become a friend. Near the end, Hannah said, I know I already apologized, but I need to say it again. I was selfish and stupid and I hurt you badly. You didn't deserve any of it. No, I didn't. But you paid for it. Literally and otherwise. Doesn't make it even. Nothing will make it even, Hannah. That's not how this works. You make amends by being different going forward, not by balancing some cosmic ledger. She nodded, eyes wet but not crying. Are we okay? Or at least on the path to okay. I thought about it. Really thought. We're something. Not what we were. Maybe something better if we both keep working at it. But it'll take time. I have time. However long it takes. We parted with a handshake, deliberate, symbolic. Not a hug, not yet. But contact. Connection. Possibility. For years after the medals were stolen, I'm standing in a different office at the Pentagon, this time as a full colonel, 06, selected early, commanding a maintenance group at Nellis next summer. The promotion ceremony was last month. My parents came. Hannah came. We took a photo together, all four of us, and it felt almost normal. The shadow box sits in my headquarters office now, relocated again, but still prominently displayed. The evidence tag has faded to barely legible, but I keep it there. New officers rotating through ask about it less frequently. At this level, everyone has stories they don't fully explain. But the cadets still ask. I host Academy cadets for mentorship sessions quarterly, and they're drawn to the incongruity of an evidence tag on military honors. A first-year cadet, sharp and serious, pointed at it during her visit last month. "Ma'am, why keep the tag? Couldn't you remove it?" I could, but it reminds me of something important. "What's that, ma'am?" Accountability isn't paperwork. It's character. And character is what you do when the cost is high and no one would blame you for choosing differently. She processed this. "Did someone steal those, ma'am?" "Yes. Someone I trusted. Federal investigators recovered them. I cooperated fully even though it destroyed some relationships I valued. Do you regret it?" I looked at the shadow box, the medals I'd earned, the tag that proved I'd protected them properly, the career that had survived because I'd chosen principle over convenience. No, I regret that it was necessary. But I don't regret my choice. After she left, I pulled up my phone and scrolled through messages. Hannah and I text regularly now, not constantly, but consistently. She sent me a photo yesterday, her at a charity 5K, raising money for veterans organizations. Building the life she'd said she would. My parents and I have dinner when I'm home. It's cordial, sometimes warm. They've never fully apologized for how they handled the crisis, but they've stopped asking me to pretend it didn't happen. That's progress, in its way. Major Tran, now Colonel Tran, is still one of my closest friends. We talk monthly, trade war stories about command and family, and the peculiar challenge of being people who value duty in a world that often doesn't. The career I fought to protect has given me everything I hoped for. Command time, strategic assignments, early promotions. In 2 years, I'll be competitive for wing commander positions. After that, maybe general officer. Not because I'm politically savvy or well-connected, but because I'm competent and my record shows I can be trusted when it matters. But the real victory isn't rank. It's looking at that evidence tag and knowing I made the right choice. It's having a relationship with my sister that's honest instead of transactional. It's learning that family doesn't mean absorbing damage. It means setting boundaries that force people to meet you at your level. Justice came quietly, exactly on schedule. Not dramatic, not satisfying in the way movies make revenge seem. Just consequence playing out according to procedure and me refusing to interfere with what needed to happen. I'm 39 now, a colonel with a promising career and relationships I've rebuilt on honest terms. The shadow box with its evidence tag will move with me to Nellis, then wherever I go after. Not as a trophy, not as revenge. As proof that accountability is character, and character is everything. 10 years is long enough to forget the sharp edges of old wounds, but not long enough to forget the lessons. I'm 49 now, a brigadier general, 1-star, 07, commanding a wing at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. The promotion came 2 years ago, on schedule, earned through command tours and staff assignments that proved I could lead at scale. My office overlooks the flight line where C-130s and C-17s cycle through on their way to points east and south. The tempo here is constant: NATO operations, humanitarian missions, rapid response taskings that don't wait for convenient timelines. It's the kind of assignment that breaks people who aren't ready for it. I've never felt more ready for anything in my life. The shadow box still hangs on my wall. Same medals, same ribbons, same faded evidence tag that's now barely more than a memory of ink on paper. My executive officer asked about it during his in-brief when I took command. "Ma'am, is there a story there?" "Yes," I said. But the short version is, it reminds me that the right thing is rarely the easy thing, and easy things rarely build anything worth having. He nodded and never asked again. That's the benefit of rank. People trust that if you want them to know more, you'll tell them. Hannah lives in Denver now, 45 years old, remarried to a high school teacher named Marcus, who seems genuinely kind. She's a regional director for a retail chain, legitimate success built on actual competence rather than social media smoke. We talk every few weeks, video calls mostly, conversations that feel normal in ways that would have seemed impossible a decade ago. Last month she called while I was reviewing readiness reports. Hey, got a minute? For you? Sure. What's up? Marcus proposed we visit you this summer. Bring the kids, see Germany, spend some time together. She paused. I know you're busy. If it's too much, just say so. The kids, Marcus's from his first marriage, teenagers now, were good kids from what I'd seen in photos and video calls. Hannah had become a stepmother and, by all accounts, a decent one. Let me check the ops tempo and get back to you. But I'd like that. Really? You're not just being polite. Hannah, I'm a general. I stopped being polite about 8 ranks ago. If I didn't want you to visit, I'd tell you directly. She laughed. Fair point. Okay, let me know what works. After we hung up, I sat with the feeling of it, my sister, wanting to visit, no hidden agenda, just connection. 10 years ago, that would have seemed impossible. But time and consistency had done what apologies alone couldn't. She'd rebuilt herself into someone I could trust, slowly, through hundreds of small choices that added up to real change. My parents are in their 70s now, retired and fragile in ways that snuck up on all of us. My father had a stroke last year, mild, but enough to remind us all that time doesn't wait. I flew home during his recovery, sat beside his hospital bed while he slept, and felt the complicated tangle of love and distance that defines our relationship now. My mother hugged me at the airport, held on longer than usual. I'm glad you came. Of course I came, Mom. I know we haven't always. I know things have been complicated. It was the closest she'd ever come to acknowledging her role in what happened with Hannah. Not an apology, but recognition. I hugged her back and said, we're here now. That's what matters. They came to my promotion ceremony when I made general. Both of them, aging but present, sitting in the front row beside Hannah and Marcus. The photographer caught a photo of my mother crying when the 1-star flag was unfurled. She sent it to me afterward with a note. I always knew you'd do something extraordinary. I'm sorry I didn't always show it. I framed that note. Keep it in my desk drawer, not for display but for the days when I need to remember that people can grow, even when it takes them decades to get there. Colonel Tran, now also a general, running operations at Yucam, is stationed close enough that we have dinner every few months. We met last week at a German restaurant off base, trading stories about the peculiar challenges of flag officer responsibility. You ever think about how weird this is? He said, gesturing at his star. We're the people giving orders that move thousands of personnel, making decisions that affect entire theaters. Every day. And then I remember that someone has to do it, and they trusted us with it. You still have that shadow box? The one with the evidence tag. Still on my wall. Still gets questions occasionally. He shook his head, smiling. You know what that tag represents now? It's not about what your sister did. It's about what you did. You're walking proof that integrity isn't theoretical. That's generous. It's accurate. How many officers at our level can point to a specific moment where they chose principle over convenience and took the full weight of consequences? Most of us just have clean files because we were never tested. I thought about that later, alone in my quarters. He was right. The shadow box wasn't about Hannah's theft anymore. It was about my response. It was evidence that when tested, I'd held the line. And that evidence had followed me up the chain of command, through every security clearance review and every leadership evaluation. The tag that had seemed like a mark of shame had become a credential. My work at Ramstein is consuming in the best way. I command 3 groups: operations, maintenance, and mission support, and the decisions I make daily affect thousands of people. I sign deployment orders, approve mission taskings, counsel commanders who are struggling with the weight of their own responsibilities. It's exhausting and exhilarating and exactly what I trained my entire career to do. But I've learned something in these 10 years that I wish I'd known earlier. Competence at work doesn't replace human connection. For too long, I let my career fill the space that relationships should have occupied. I was so good at mission accomplishment that I forgot mission wasn't everything. Hannah taught me that, ironically. Not through the theft, that just broke what was already broken, but through the rebuilding. Through showing me that real relationships require vulnerability, maintenance, and the willingness to show up even when it's uncomfortable. Last Christmas, we gathered at my parents' house, all of us together for the first time in over a decade. Hannah and Marcus with his kids, me on midterm leave, everyone carefully navigating the dynamics of people who share history but not habits. My mother made too much food, the way she always does. My father told the same stories he'd been telling for 40 years. Hannah and I helped with dishes while Marcus entertained the teenagers with some story about his teaching disasters. This is nice, Hannah said quietly, elbow deep in soapy water. Normal. Yeah, it is. Think we'll ever stop being surprised by normal? I dried a plate, considering. Maybe. Or maybe we'll just get better at appreciating it. She smiled at that. You've gotten philosophical in your old age, General. 1 star doesn't make me old. Just experienced. Whatever you say, ma'am. She handed me another plate. Seriously though, thank you. For giving me the chance to prove I changed. A lot of people wouldn't have. A lot of people don't get sisters who actually do the work to change. You earned the chance, Hannah. All I did was leave the door open. That was everything, though. You could have locked it. No one would have blamed you. I thought about the shadow box, about the evidence tag, about the decade of small choices that had brought us to this moment of dishwater and quiet conversation. I learned something from what happened, I said. Holding grudges takes more energy than building boundaries. I didn't forgive you quickly. But I also didn't waste energy on revenge or punishment. I just let consequences happen and stayed open to the possibility that people can grow. Did you learn that in the Air Force? I learned it from being human. The Air Force just gave me the framework to understand it. Later that night, sitting in my childhood bedroom, now a guest room, redecorated since I'd cleared it out years ago, I pulled up my phone and scrolled through photos from the day. My father laughing at something Marcus said. My mother hugging Hannah. The teenagers trying to teach me some social media trend I didn't understand. Me in civilian clothes, relaxed, smiling. I looked different than I had 10 years ago. Not just older, though there were more lines around my eyes and gray threading through my hair. But softer somehow. Like I'd finally stopped bracing for the next crisis and learned to exist in moments as they came. The next morning, before I left for the airport, my mother pulled me aside. I need to say something I should have said years ago. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. What happened with Hannah and your medals, we handled it terribly. We blamed you for enforcing consequences instead of supporting you through what must have been incredibly painful. You were right. You were right to report it, right to protect your career, right to set boundaries. And I'm sorry it took me this long to say it. I felt something crack open in my chest, not pain, but release. Thank you. That means more than you know. You turned out to be everything we hoped for and more. I just wish we'd appreciated it better along the way. I hugged her, feeling her fragility and strength in equal measure. We're here now, Mom. That's what matters. Flying back to Germany, I watched the Atlantic pass beneath me and thought about the decade that had brought me to this moment. The career that had flourished because I'd refused to compromise integrity. The family relationships rebuilt on honest foundations. The understanding that justice isn't always dramatic, sometimes it's just consequences playing out according to their nature, and you refusing to interfere. The shadow box would move with me to whatever assignment came next. Maybe a 2 star if I continued performing. Maybe a Pentagon position at the 3-star level. Maybe something else entirely. But wherever I went, that faded evidence tag would go with me. Not as a reminder of what was stolen, but as proof of what was kept. Hannah visits this summer. We'll tour castles and drink beer gardens and let her stepkids complain about how boring European history is. We'll have real conversations and probably some uncomfortable moments, because that's what families do. But we'll also have connection, built slowly over a decade of consistency and trust. My parents won't be around forever. But they'll leave knowing we found our way back to something real, even if it took longer and looked different than anyone expected. And I'll keep serving, keep leading, keep making decisions that matter. The stolen medals taught me something the Air Force couldn't. Accountability isn't just about following rules. It's about holding the line when no one would blame you for letting go. It's about building the life you can be proud of, even when it costs you the life others wanted you to have. 10 years later, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The general I was meant to become. The sister Hannah needed me to be, not perfect, not endlessly forgiving, but present and honest. The evidence tag has faded to almost nothing now. But the lesson it represents has never been clearer. Character is what remains when everything else is stripped away. And mine has been tested, proven, and found sufficient. That's worth more than any medal. Thanks for listening. I drew a line and kept it, and it changed everything. If this hit home, tap like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs the push. New stories every week. Your turn. Have you ever had a family member sell or borrow something important without asking? What did you do? Where's your line? Protect family or protect yourself, and why? Would you have reported it or handled it privately? If someone pays restitution, does that earn a second chance or just close the account? What's one boundary you wish you'd set sooner? Drop your answers in the comments. I read them all.